decisions that need to be made in this room. Impress upon the hearts of these leaders that they follow your will. It is in your Son's name that we pray and we serve. Amen.
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 Thank you, Ginger. Now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Kirkton.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we go to roll call, I would just like to remind everyone to silence your phones, please. Now we can go to roll call.
Vietti. Present. Bunning.
Present.
Kirkton.
Present.
Manker. Berkman.
Here.
Slagle. Fannin.
Present.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Here.
Menninga.
Present.
Kestner. Welch.
Present.
Carly.
Present.
Weller. Ritter. Okay. Mays.
Here.
Lovell.
Here.
Ambrose. Here. Blackard.
Here.
Ehring.
Here.
Vidstum.
Here.
Arbogast.
Present.
Wilkie.
Present.
Runyon.
Here.
Okay, you have the agenda before you. You need a motion to approve.
Motion by Fannin to approve.
Second.
Second by Doc Carly. Roll call, please.
Vietti. Yes. Bunning.
Yes.
Kirkton.
Yes.
Manker. Yes. Berkman.
Yes.
Slagle. Fannin.
Yes.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
Yes.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Carly.
Yes.
Weller. Yes. Ritter.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Blackard.
Yes.
Ehring.
Yes.
Fidstum.
Yes.
Arbogast.
Yes.
Wilkie.
Yes.
And Runyon.
Yes.
Okay, we have no minutes for tonight's meeting, so we will move down to the consent agenda. Approval of bills. Need a motion for that, please.
Motion to approve by Fannin.
Second by Ritter. And second by Ritter. Roll call, please.
Vietti. Bunning.
Yes.
Kirkton.
Yes.
Manker.
Yes.
Berkman.
Yes.
Slagle. Fannin.
Yes.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
Yes.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Carly.
Yes.
Weller. Yes. Ritter.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Blackard.
Yes.
Ehring.
Yes.
Fidstum.
Yes.
Arbogast.
Yes.
Wilkie.
Yes.
And Runyon.
Yes.
Okay, now down to action agenda committee reports. I'll turn it over to Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the spirit of the aforementioned wisdom, we have for your consideration a homegrown COVID relief stimulus grant for businesses in Livingston County. I know Elena developed through the initiative of our own staff and Adam Dance. So Elena, would you care to elaborate?
Sure. What's being proposed is that we offer a grant to businesses who have been impacted by COVID but have otherwise not received any other type of aid related to COVID-19. What is recommended by the Finance Committee is that we provide a grant of $2,000 per full-time employee and $1,000 for part-time employees. I emailed out the resolution and the grant guidelines for your review earlier today. They also are on your desk if you didn't receive them by email. And I'd entertain any questions that you might have. The total grant approved up to is $213,000. 213.
Linda?
Just to clarify, like a single proprietor of, say, their own beauty shop, just one person in there, that person can apply, they would possibly receive $2,000. That would be the most they could receive.
They can, they would have to meet the other requirements in here, such as there's a requirement that they have lost a minimum of $15,000 over the 3 quarters, the second, third, and fourth quarter of calendar year 2020. So if they lost that, they would be eligible. Even if it was only them, they could receive a grant up to $2,000 in that case.
Okay, and then also a constituent contacted me and asked about the possibility, even though I know we discussed it a lot last night, or the Finance Committee did, of dividing the money by 3 for the 3 districts to make sure each one got a shot at it fairly. So I just said I would bring that up.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions for Elena? Beth?
Is there any way that we could go beyond putting it in the paper and, like, is there any way we could email out to?
We are.
Okay.
So we have those ready to go, and so as soon as this meeting is over, Adam Dantz, I know, is with us through Zoom if we have any questions for him as well. We both have the email blasts ready to go, so as soon as this meeting is over and everything is approved, we'll push those out. They will be posted on the GLCDC website. They will be posted on our website. It includes media notifications. Basically, everyone in our contact list, you'll receive them. Feel free to share them with anyone in your contact list. We'll really make an attempt to get it out there as much as possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Weller?
Alina, the aggregate is 213,000.
Correct.
Is there a limit on the per business?
It's 10,000 per business, per applicant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I will move it, Chairman Schaefer.
Well, thank you. Is there a
Second.
Second by Jim Blackard. Roll call.
Vietti. Bunning.
Yes.
Kirkton.
Yes.
Manker.
Yes, are you hearing me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Barrickman.
Yes.
Slagle. Fannin.
Yes.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
Yes.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Carly.
Yes.
Weller.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Blackard.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Vidstem.
Yes.
Arbogast.
Yes.
Wilkie.
Yes.
Runyon.
Yes.
Hey, great, thank you. Did a good thing. That will get some people some help. That's good deal. Christie,
Yes,
it's
sir.
time for your semi-annual report.
Would you like the long version or the short version?
Leave it to you as our entertainment.
Okay. On the daily cash account, well, this is a report for the second 6 months of 2020. Our daily cash account, we took in $392,165.45, and those were distributed, some to the general fund, some to our recording automation fund, a large portion to state of Illinois revenue, and then we had miscellaneous accounts within the general fund that monies went to. On the comparison report, I'm going to highlight a couple things on there. We had marriage licenses. We did 113 in the last 6 months of the fiscal 2020. There it says online service fee. That's a program we offer where people can go for vital records and get them. They can go through the online service. There's a $10 charge that our vendor, Fiddler, receives, and of that we get $2.50, as well as our fees for the birth and death and marriage license or records that they're asking for. That went down a little bit, but we also have people who come in person and get their information too. The other thing is the revenue stamps, and it shows a loss of $68,000, but it's not really a loss. What happened was, up until May of this year, I would go to Springfield to pick up the, it's like a postage meter, and we would take a check with us, and they would fill that with for the revenue, the transfer taxes, for the taxes we charge for the state. The state has a tax of $1 per thousand of a selling price of a home or property, as well as the county has 50 cents that we keep. And up until that point, it was all going into general fund, and then we would take the check down and get the money. It was like an inventory account. But as of May of this year, the state had, it's called MyDeck, where the information's entered online by the loan institutions when the property's sold. So the transfer tax is all paid to us, and we keep it. And then at the end of the month, we submit it to the state through ACH. So we don't have to run to Springfield with the machine and get it filled up with the stamps. And what we did the first 6 months, that the state and the county tax was all included together. So for the first 6 months, we showed $101,275, and then the second 6 months, it was $33,000. But the state share is shown down 3 sections down in the red, where it's the state of Illinois revenue of $66,000. So if you take the two, there wasn't that, and add them up, there wasn't that much difference. It was a little less than the first 6 months. As we go down further, the Laredo fee, what that is our online records for our land records, any of the recordings that we have since 2002. From 2002 on, those are all have been scanned in and they're online. So the people, what they can do is go ahead, and it's a monthly subscription fee. They subscribe. We have 17 participants in it, and the fees that they pay are anywhere from $75 to $400 a month for access to that. And it's based on the number of minutes that they use. Plan A is 0 through 250 minutes. They pay $75 a month, and they also pay 25 cents for each page that they print off. And they're billed at the end of each month. We have 10 people on the Plan A, which is $75 a month. And then the highest plan we have is $400 a month, and that's for unlimited, and we have 2 customers on that. So based on those fees, we take in about $2,400 a month just on those fees, and that goes into the recording automation fund. That money will be used to help scan more documents so that we can have more information out there for the searchers and that. A lot of them have been able to go online and get the information they need rather than having to come to our office, so it's made it very handy for them, and it's also helps to fund other items that we want to do with our recordings. Another thing that we have is a tapestry, and that is that's our records that are online too, and if someone doesn't want to have a monthly subscription, they can go out and they can have per document. If they know or they need to search, then they can print off a document, and those are $6.95 plus 25 cents a page. Our recording information, our recording revenue went up. We had 841 more documents that we recorded over 2019, and that was due mainly for the refinancing that has been going on, the low interest rates, so there's been lots of refinancing of loans and that. In, I think, last month's meeting, Marty had asked a question about the number of deaths that had occurred in the county. And we had checked with the state of Illinois, the Department of Public Health, because we file the death records. They're filed with us, and then we transfer the information to the state. So they usually let us know how many we have sent down. And I've got the statistics for the births and for the deaths. For the births, starting in 2018, we had 231. 2019, we had 188, and in 2020, we had 148 births. So the births have been going down. For the death part of it, 2018, we had 376 death records we reported. 2019, we had 390, and 2020, we had 445. So there was a significant increase there. So I do know that when the funeral directors and that were coming in to pick up copies, they said that like the last 3 to 6 months, they'd had, actually it's about the last 4 months, they had as many deaths as what they had the first, through the year. So, but I guess that's about all the highlights that I have. Did anybody have any questions on the report that you? Yes.
Christie, it's unfortunate the births are way down and the deaths are up, but on the deaths, what gets recorded here? Only people who pass away in Livingston County? Let's say
Yes.
there's a Livingston County resident that passes away in Cook County. Does that get recorded here or up there?
No, it's up there.
So it could be
Where
more.
they die is where the death is recorded at.
Okay,
That jurisdiction's responsible.
yeah.
And some of it is through the county clerk's office, and some of them is through the public health departments.
Similar question. So, seems like a lot of people, when they're pregnant, have their babies in Bloomington. Are those recorded in McLean County? So those
Yes.
numbers really don't really mean much.
It
Right.
just means those that were born at St. James.
Right. So it's not really reflective of the total number of births and deaths of the residents of Livingston County.
The ratio would probably be true. There's not a huge groundswell of births and deaths in additional counties, Joe. I don't think that's true at all.
What I'm saying is that most of the births occur in Bloomington or people around me in Ottawa, sometimes in Peoria.
I would say that's a supposition on your part. We don't know
Maybe,
that.
but I think it's a pretty accurate one.
We don't know that either.
I actually agree with Joe. I think it probably is, because I have 4 grandchildren that all live in Livingston County, and all 4 of them were born in a different county. 3 of them were born in McLean County, and 1 was born in Peoria.
And I think several people in my area go down to Gibson City. They doctor down there.
I concur with that, because at least 8 of my grandchildren have been born in McLean County, and they live in Pontiac, so I agree with you, Joel.
So we need a new obstetrics department, right? Any more questions?
No.
Thank you, Christie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Is there a motion to approve a report?
I'll make a motion. Wilkie.
Motion by Wilkie, second by Ambrose. Roll call.
Vietti. Bunning.
Yes.
Kirkton.
Yes.
Manker.
Yes.
Berkman.
Yes.
Slagle. Fannin.
Yes.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
Yes.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Harley.
Yes.
Weller. Ritter. Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes?
Blackard.
Yes.
Airing.
Yes.
Fitstum.
Yes.
Arbogast.
Yes.
Wilkie.
Yes.
Runyon.
Yes.
Okay, last item of business is a renewal for 4 years of our proportional agreement with the Regional Office of Education. We pick up 12%, I think Logan picks up 12% of the cost, and DeWitt picks up 9%. McLean County obviously picks up the balance of that. And that office, for many years, if you don't know, they run the GED program. They run continuing education for educators within that region, and also some adult ed stuff, and probably do a couple of other things that I don't know about. So, but we do need to renew it, and is there a motion to approve that?
Motion by Fannin.
Motion by Fannin, second by Ehring. Roll call?
Vietti. Bunning.
Yes.
Kirkton.
Yes.
Manker.
Yes.
Barrickman.
Yes.
Slagle. Fannin.
Yes.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
Yes.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Carly.
Yes.
Weller. Ritter.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Blackard.
Yes.
Ehring.
Yes.
Fitstum.
Yes.
Arbogast.
Yes.
Wilkie.
Yes.
And Runyon.
Yes.
That's all we have.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Now we'll move down to Sheriff Jail License, Mr. Carly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one action item. There was a change of ownership at Wolf Creek, so we're obligated to, they have to put a liquor license application in. We have to okay the new owners. Alina, do you want to elaborate on that at all, or?
I think you covered it just fine. Do you have anything, Kristen?
No, they did do their background check, but it hasn't come back yet, so we're waiting on that.
So we can go ahead and vote pending the,
Pending.
Yeah,
It'd
just
be
pending.
contingent upon
Yeah.
attorney approval.
okay, I make a motion that we do that. We approve it pending attorney approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Everybody.
Pick one.
I know Weller had his hand up.
Vietti. Bunning.
Yes.
Kirkton.
Yes.
Manker.
Yes.
Barrickman.
Yes.
Slagle. Fannin.
Yes.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
Yes.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Carly.
Yes.
Weller.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Blackard.
Yes.
Ehring.
Yes.
Fitstum. Arbogast.
Yes.
Wilkie.
Yes.
Runyon.
Yes.
I noticed the sheriff's on. I don't know if he'd have any comments to make right now, or if there'd be any questions for him he could ask, or if he has any comments. Tony, I don't know if you do, if you can hear me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. The only thing I have is I'm sure many of you are aware that the state of Illinois passed a House bill yesterday that will drastically affect law enforcement. We're, however, thankful that there was a couple of things that did not go through that we thought were going to go through, and that was qualified immunity. So police officers in the state of Illinois still do have and continue to have qualified immunity and the state law tort immunity. A task force on qualified immunity is being established, however, and we're still indemnified, or the employer still has to indemnify the police officers. There's some amended guidelines on use of deadly force that were brought about with this bill. And it also brought about a mandatory imposition of a duty to intervene or to render aid. And it also created a Class 3 felony for certain law enforcement misconduct. So body cameras were brought in and will eventually become mandatory. So you folks should know that. The timeline is based on size of municipality by 2025. The Attorney General can investigate agencies for pattern and practices of constitutional violations and file lawsuits against those agencies. This new bill also provides for mental health screening of officers. While we've been very lucky, very blessed to not to have any suicides, as I'm sure a number of you are aware, there are a number of agencies around us and north of us that have had to deal with numerous suicides in the last couple of years. So with that being said, the mental health screening comes into play, and I think rightly so. This requires 3 phone calls for a detainee within 3 hours. It used to be 1 phone call, now it's 3. Cash bail ends within 2 years, and I would look to Mr. Yednock to elaborate on that, because I'm not really sure what that exactly means. It also adds some steps that must be taken prior to the execution of a search warrant. Here again, I would be looking for information from our state's attorney. Police misconduct records must be permanently retained, and there is also a push or part of this legislation that calls for police officer certification and decertification to be expanded. So that's pretty much all I have as it relates to House Bill 163, which is now known as House Bill 3653. Anybody have any questions?
Sheriff, this is Paul Ritter.
Yes, Paul.
So, not to switch gears on that particular piece of legislation because it's evident it's going to make a drastic impact. Can you give us any information on the piece of legislation that was introduced that would possibly call for the removal of student resource officers from the schools?
Yes, we looked at that this afternoon, me and Captain Greger and Chief Deputy Hamilton and I looked at that legislation. As far as we could tell, they are talking about that, but no vote has been taken on that, and we don't know if there is going to be a vote taken on it.
What is the background or want for such a piece of legislation? What are they trying to accomplish with this?
Anything and everything to defund the police is what they're trying to accomplish, as far as we can see. All of you pretty much know my stance on police officers, school resource officers, and to me, it's the stupidest thing I ever heard of, to now have the officers in the schools and have had them now for a few years doing great jobs, to now pull them out and put our schools and our children at risk. I think it's the stupidest thing I ever heard of, but it goes right along with some of the other things in this Senate House bill and some of the things that they're doing right now. And it all boils down to, I'm gonna say, the cries of people like Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the cries that say we need to defund the police. And however we can do that, we need to do it. And that's what they want to see done. And unfortunately, you have those in the General Assembly that want to see that happen. And I think a lot of it is Democrat versus Republicans. And I see more of the Republicans voting yes for these bills. I'm sorry, the Democrats voting yes for these bills and the Republicans doing the right thing. So unfortunately, that's what we've got to deal with right now. And I'm going to do everything I can to fight it. But as you all know, I'm only one man. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate your commitment. I appreciate the numerous student resource officers that are in our schools, making connections with our students on a greater level as a community and helping things. So I appreciate all that you guys are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter.
Mr. Kirkton?
Tony, 1 second, please. Tony, it's Kathy. So I believe the resource officer has been moved to a different House bill. It is, Alina, remember the number 002? I have it written down in my office in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not included in this one.
Well, what they do, this is what they do. They start out a bill on one plane under one number, and then to get coy, they move it to a different number, and then they do it like they did House Bill 163 in a lame duck session at 4 o'clock a.m. and give the General Assembly or members of the Senate or members of the House 700 pages to read in an hour. And then they push it right through.
Right.
So it's the most ludicrous thing I ever heard of. But this is what they do.
Mr. Kirkton?
Yes.
Hey, Sheriff, Mike Kirkton here. I got a quick question for you. One of the other items I also heard was in this bill was that the police officers have to be licensed now.
They're going under a plan with Illinois Law Enforcement Standards and Trainings Board to certify police officers. And obviously, if you get into trouble, then they can decertify you as a police officer, and that way you will not be able to work anywhere, literally, especially in the state of Illinois.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone else have a question for Tony? Mr. Blackard?
Tony, this is Jim Blackard. Just real quick, I know we have some very good officers in your department, but can you report back maybe at the committee meeting as to what the general feeling is among the officers after this has passed and they've gotten a chance to digest it all?
What I will tell you, Mr. Blackard, is that all of us should be prepared for a mass exodus of good officers, unfortunately. With some of the things that they're coming down with in these bills, no good police officer in his right mind will want to work in the state of Illinois. That's very unfortunate, but that's what we're looking at.
That's what I was afraid of, sir.
All I can say is Godspeed, and hopefully there's a universal power that will see fit to smooth some things out and rough some of the edges that we're having to deal with right now. I will tell you that a couple of the good things that we as police officers were happy to see, and that was them to not take away our qualified immunity and our collective bargaining.
Absolutely.
Because had they taken that, I can guarantee you nobody in their right mind will want to be a police officer again in this day and age. So right now we still have qualified immunity and we still have collective bargaining. But it would appear that they're chipping away at us as much as they can. And that's very unfortunate. Because it's going to make our cities, our communities, much less safe. The same thing with the school resource officers. You pull those school resource officers out of our school, I don't care who you talk to, you just made our schools much less safe. So how do you do that? How do you take and make the environment that our children are in every day on a daily basis, make them unsafe, and you're good with that. I don't know how you do it with a good conscience and go to sleep at night.
Are there any other questions for the sheriff? Seeing none, I want to thank Sheriff Childress and his department for the work they do, and I'm going to ask all of us as board members, if you see an officer, go up and thank them, because they're doing a heck of a job in this county. Randy, did you want to comment on anything the sheriff said? You do not have to, but do you want to speak to any points?
Microphone.
I can answer additional questions that people might have regarding the legislation. I serve on the executive committee for the Illinois State's Attorneys Association, and we spent countless hours in Zoom meetings and phone calls with various members of our legislature and Senate trying to negotiate the language of this bill, at least from the state's attorney's standpoint. I know the Sheriff's Association and the Chiefs Association were doing their part with respect to the police reform portions of the bill, but just with respect to the portions that affect the court system and prosecutions, it was very disingenuous, I guess is the best way to put it. To give you a little bit of background as to how this bill evolved, it actually started in 2019. It was 7 pages when it started in 2019. It was introduced on February 15th in 2019. It was 7 pages. When they voted to pass it originally, it would just contain those 7 pages, and those 7 pages really just amended 2 sentences within the Illinois Sentencing Code, and it wasn't really anything substantive. It was just 2 sentences within the Illinois Sentencing Code. At the close of business on January 10th of this year is when it was changed to 611 pages with the text that read, as it was. We fought. They dropped that in our lap within a couple hours before what they were supposed to vote on it, which of course their heads were exploding, because how are we supposed to read 611 pages within an hour? That night then, we spent 3 hours, the Illinois State's Attorneys Association spent 3 hours with the Illinois Black Caucus negotiating language, amending some of the language, telling them this is what we think we can live with. We went back and forth. Actual agreements were made. We made agreements to change the language, and they were indicated to us that they would have a amended bill to us by 7 o'clock that morning. Of course, they didn't. By noon of that day then, we were given 657 pages within 45 minutes of the vote, and it had literally none of the things that we agreed to. None of the language, none of it in any way, shape, or form. It was just as if they took our recommendations and threw them out the window. At that point, then, we turned to the Senate because we felt if there was any chance of defeating this bill, it was in the Senate. Thankfully, Senator Berrickman, other senators downstate were very much opposed to this and were very much a voice, an ally for us in this. But it wasn't enough. As of noon, the day before it actually passed, we thought we had it defeated. We thought we had, they didn't have enough votes, but somewhere between noon and 3 o'clock the next morning, they added another 50-some pages to it, gave it to us 50 minutes before the vote, and again, none of the changes. So this is what we're dealing with. This is what the Sheriff's Association dealt with. This is what the Police Chiefs Association dealt with. I do not like to, I've never been the type of person that likes to come before and talk about how the sky is falling, and this is the worst, but I will tell you, this is the worst piece of legislation that has been passed in the state of Illinois as far as I can remember. I'm not that old, but as far as I can remember, it will drastically affect how we prosecute cases in Livingston County, in the state of Illinois. It will drastically affect how law enforcement investigate cases. One of the things the sheriff talked about was the 3 phone calls prior to, let's say an individual commits a murder, is arrested, detained, taken to the sheriff's department. Law enforcement cannot talk to him, by law, cannot talk to him anymore until he's given up to an hour and 3 phone calls on his own cell phone, to which the Illinois State's Attorneys Association said, well, how do we prevent that person then from deleting incriminating text messages, information on their phone, or texting other people to destroy evidence in cases. Well, they added language that says it's under police supervision. So then my question was, well, then can the police officer stop them from doing that? Well, no, that's their fundamental right. So what good does that do us? The city of Chicago had roughly 800 murders last year, and I think they solved around 37% of them. If law enforcement officers can't talk to people for up to an hour afterwards, now they're required to have an attorney present before they can talk to them. How many of those murders do you think they're going to solve? Much less. And how many of those murders do you think are going to go up now? The sheriff indicated the end of cash bail. What that means is that we can no longer require people to post any kind of cash bail before they get out of jail. If you're arrested for murder, in order for me to have you detained, you're either detained or you're not detained. There's no money involved in this anymore. And in order for someone to be detained, I have to convince a judge that there is a specifically named person that this individual poses a threat to. So if a man goes out and kills his wife, comes into court and says, Judge, I killed my wife, but I have nobody else that I have a beef with, and I can't prove that there's a specific person this man poses a threat to, she will be required by law to release that man on bail. If a man comes into court and says, I indiscriminately and randomly perpetrate crimes against small children, I'm going to do it again, but I can't tell you who my next victim is going to be. By law, the judge is required to release that person onto the street. That's what this bill does. That's what this law does. It is a terrible, terrible law. We are very blessed. We're very fortunate that we have the legislators that we have here. I've spoken with Senator Barrickman, Representative Bennett, Representative Brady. They were all very supportive of opposing this bill, but it wasn't enough. And I will end by saying we again talked with the Black Caucus. We indicated to them that 100 out of 102 state's attorneys in the state of Illinois opposed this bill. The only two that didn't were Cook County and Lake County. And the Senate leader, L.G. Sims, indicated, well, that's over half the county, or half the population of the state. So in his words, he didn't care what the rest of us thought. And that's how this got passed. So there will be significant monetary implications for the county. And I can go over some of those, but I don't want to keep it too late. So.
I got a question.
Gerald,
Yes.
do you have a question for Randy?
Yeah, I don't know how this is gonna be affected, but, okay, say they take the officers out of our schools. As a county, can we overrule that on our own and have our own people in there like we've been doing? Is that legal or not legal?
No, it all depends on what the final version of the statute looks like, what the law, if it's passed. But if the state of Illinois says you can't have school resource officers in there, you can't have school resource officers in there. And the background that I gave you was kind of to give you a heads up as to many of your questions I may not have answers for, because this bill has changed 14 times in the last 5 days. And so we're still trying to parcel out of the 711 pages what it's going to mean for us. Yeah.
Randy, one of the comments you made may be partially good news, and that was, I believe you mentioned that 100 out of 102 county state's attorneys opposed the bill. Okay?
Yes.
In that regard, across the country, we have seen where some outside influence, multi-billionaire, has influenced local district attorney, state's attorney races and installed their own people. Do you see that that has affected anything within Illinois as of this time? And the second part of my query is, these people are very highly organized and they are ready to roll. They went from 7 pages to 612 to 657 or whatever the number was, like that. I mean, they were ready. They knew exactly what they wanted to do when it came D-Day.
Yes, they absolutely
Agree
did.
with that?
There's several constitutional requirements that are in place before a bill can be passed. You have to have a number of hearings. You have to provide public notice of the bills. And what was done since it was first introduced in February of 2019 was they would have a hearing here. And when I say they, I mean mainly the Black Caucus and the proponents of these, the sponsors of these bills. They would have a hearing on a random Thursday about chokeholds, police chokeholds, that really didn't mean anything because it wasn't attached to any bill, so nobody attended it. Nobody really cared too much about it, to be honest with you. And so they met their statutory requirements by doing things like this, and all along drafting this bill, and like you said, had it ready for this lame duck session and getting it passed. As far as individuals influencing district attorney or state's attorney races in the state of Illinois.
Infiltrating, basically.
Infiltrating. You know, the Cook County state's attorney ran for re-election. She was elected this year, and her biggest platform, her biggest campaign was police reform. And so, not that I agree with her position in any way, shape, or form, or the positions that she's taken, but that was kind of a signal to us that she absolutely was going to agree with this bill. The Lake County state's attorney, which was the only other state's attorney to not oppose the bill, was the same thing. He won election based on police reform, that we need to reform criminal justice system, which I think sounds great and everybody agrees with. Why wouldn't we? Absolutely. Why wouldn't we want better prosecutors? Why wouldn't we want better police officers? But the way they go about doing it obviously is not good. Do I see there any kind of influence on district attorney or state's attorney races? I don't see it too much downstate, but it plays a big part in upstate Illinois, yes.
Randy, in your scenario with the murder, so the judge, to be in compliance with the law, if signed by the governor as it is that to be compliant, and you can't give any other threat, they do have to release them.
They do. I have to name a specific person that this individual poses a threat to, and if I can't do that, the judge will be required to release the person on pretrial release.
Huh.
So basically, all this legislation that you and Tony have relayed to us, we're putting the handcuffs on the wrong people. They're handcuffing law and law enforcement, period.
I found it rather disingenuous that the same group that was screaming from the top of the hill about police reform and criminal justice reform was the same group that backed Public Speaker A for House Speaker. Now, granted, he did not win, but I don't know at what point we get where the bad guys, we're treating the police like the bad guys, and that doesn't make sense to me. I can't wrap my head around that.
And that follows through to our local officers in our schools. These officers, from reports that I've got from parents, these officers have become friends of the kids have become friends of the officers, the kids relay information to the officers, they trust the officers, and we've made tremendous strides forward. Tony's done a great job on this with his guys and gals, and now we're taking, not 10 steps back, hell, we're backing up miles, and they're handcuffing us there too, and my fear is, not only are they taking the officer away, but now we're turning around and teaching these youngsters that police officer's bad guy. We took him away because he's a bad guy.
What they have essentially done is handicap the officers and state's attorneys and the court system by stacking the laws for the criminals against the criminal justice system. That is their idea of criminal justice reform. And what I will tell you, that my take on it is that it's the most egregious assault on law enforcement and on criminal justice that I believe any of us has ever seen in our lives. And if we're not careful, it will just continually get more difficult and more wrong as time goes on.
And you guys in law enforcement know that once the criminals figure out when they get arrested because they killed somebody, oh, but officer, I'm done. That was the only guy I had. And that's going to be the story. And they're all going to, it's going to be common knowledge.
So there was a law passed about 5 years ago with respect to juveniles that required that any time a juvenile suspect was going to be held, detained, and interrogated on a crime, they were required for certain offenses, and mainly the most serious ones, murder, serious sexual assault crimes, they were required, you could not talk to them unless they had an attorney present. And I think that's something that most of law enforcement and prosecutors are able to live with because we're dealing with juveniles. We're dealing with individuals that haven't they haven't matured enough. But now that same law is essentially applied to adults. And a perfect example would be the shooting that we had in Streeter here just a week ago, None of those individuals could we have spoken with. None of them. If it was suspected that any of them was a shooter, none of them could we have talked to them without an attorney present. And I will tell you that even the worst lawyers, which there are bad ones, I will admit that, even the worst lawyers, the first thing you learn in law school is you always tell your client, don't ever talk to the police. No good ever comes from talking to the police. So you can guess how many statements we'll get from people in custody now anytime we detain somebody for a homicide, anytime we detain somebody for a serious sex crime, anything like that. We're not going to get statements from them. So we will, you know, we've seen bad laws in the past, and we are fortunate, and I've said this many times, sound like a broken record, we're very fortunate in Livingston County to have the law enforcement that we do. We're very fortunate to have the judges that we do, that share the same values that we all do, that law enforcement does. We will adapt, because that's what we do. And we have already, I've already spoken with the judges on this. I've already started speaking with law enforcement on this. We will find ways around these new laws, because that's what we'll do. And I will tell you that my office is already coordinating training for law enforcement on these new changes. But it's going to take some time, and there's going to be some growing pains that goes with this law, but we will adapt, and we'll make it work to the best that we can.
Chairman Carley, can I ask another question?
Yes, you may.
And this is off on a different tangent, Tony and Randy. I understand that our inmates out at the Pontiac Correctional Center are all receiving China virus government checks, just like John Q. Public is receiving in the mail. I guess they're all getting these COVID checks. Tony, are any of our residents of the Livingston County Jail getting these government checks?
I'm not aware of that, Mr. Weller. However, I don't know if Stu Edmond is still on or not, but he could tell us more in line with if that's going on over at our place or not.
I have to admit, I don't understand this because some of these people have been in there for years. I tend to wonder whether they file tax returns. Maybe they're running one hell of a business out of the prison and they actually file taxes, I don't know. But why in the world these people qualify for these COVID stimulus checks is beyond me. So I don't even know who to go to and ask about that. How in the world is something like that happening? But I would be curious to see whether that comes down to the county level.
Right. And I would suggest making a call over to the correctional center and asking for the warden's office to check on that. But also check with Mr. Enman tomorrow, because I think he's gone now, he's not on. But check with Stu Enman tomorrow, see if we're getting. I'm not aware that we're getting, and I have not heard that, but that doesn't mean it's not happening, because it's their mail. So, you know, they have their rights, you know, so we'll just have to take a look and see.
One more question.
Yes.
Both Randy and Tony, just out of curiosity, as the laws become more ineffective in dealing with criminals, is there any thought to the effect this will have on the general populace and maybe rise in vigilantism?
That, I won't answer for the sheriff, but that was absolutely something that we discussed with the Black Caucus, was you understand what this will do if we have individuals that we cannot hold accountable for breaking the law, if we have individuals that we can't, you know, bring them to justice, you know what's going to happen, and that you're going to see a rise in that type of stuff. And I guess that wasn't a concern of theirs.
No, that's, in my opinion, that's what they want. I mean, you got to remember where this all started. This all started with George Floyd, which, if there was a death caused by the police that was ever wrong, that was it. That, I mean, you know, you don't keep your knee on a guy's neck for 9 minutes almost, and then expect him not to die and expect everything to be all right. So that was wrong. You had the girl that was shot and killed in Louisville, Breonna Taylor. This is what all of those killings brought about. And it brought about a manner in which the Black Caucuses, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, they all want to operate on a level that makes us unsafe. And vigilantism is the top of the day. That's unfortunate, folks, but that's what we're looking at.
Mr. Welsh?
Yeah, this is for the sheriff or Mr. Yednak. In regards to the body cams, who's responsible for storing that data once it rolls out?
The county and the municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
That's one of the many significant expenses that we're going to have. I know John Sear can probably explain how much money it's going to cost. We have to keep the videos from, it changes 5 to 7 years, but if every officer is required to have a body cam and then store that video, that's going to be a significant undertaking by the county.
That NAS is going to be huge. Hate to say it.
Like, what's a rough?
You're talking terabytes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's another unfunded liability is what they call, or not liability, mandate, I apologize. You got to do this, and we're not going to tell you how you're going to pay for it.
And how long do you have to keep those videos of the body cams?
I think the most recent version of the law, the one that passed, I think says 5 years, but at one point it was 7 years, and that's one thing I've not been able to confirm yet.
Are there any other questions for either the state's attorney or the sheriff? If not, we're going to move along, but do we have any other questions? They've been very, very explicit and very detailed in explaining things. I want to thank both you gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
That concludes my brief report, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Carley, for that brief report. Now we'll move on to the IT committee. Mr. Fannin?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have one action item tonight. Staffing request, we're requesting a full-time information technology specialist. John, do you want to say anything on this?
Basically what I'm asking for, right now I have 2 part-time positions. I only have 1 part-time person actually working because last year I had 2 people come and go for full-time jobs. I'm asking when Kate retires to make those 2 part-time a full-time position. So then I would have me and 1 other person.
Questions for John?
If not, I'll make a motion, we approve the request.
I got a motion by Wilkie. Do I have a second?
Second by Barrickman.
Second by Barrickman. Any other comments?
Well, can John give us an idea what we're talking about financially compared to where we're at now? I mean, we're doing this strategic planning stuff to hold the line on things. We're asking every department to do that. I want to thank you for doing the excellent job you do, and I know you've got a lot of work. I don't envy it at all. I don't doubt there's a need. But we're trying to make all departments in the strategic planning hold the line on things, and I don't know how much of that, what that equates to in terms of your budget, what the part-time people made as compared to the full-time person. I don't know if you have an idea, but if you do, I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Right now for my line item for my 2 part-time help, I have about $42,000 in the budget. Ideally, I would have 1 full-time person that would be under the $42,000. The only added cost to the county is the benefits, the insurance, the IMRF, and the Social Security, which I added up at $21 an hour would be about $13,000 a year.
And so would that then go over the 42 if you put that in there? Or
No,
what?
that wasn't under my 42,000.
Oh.
I mean, if I have to adjust it, I can figure out how to
No,
do it.
I'm just asking. I don't know, and I appreciate
No.
you answering it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike? Thank you, Marty. And I think most people know that I'm kind of opposed to this, and for the very reasons that you said, Doc Harley, because it's an additional almost $14,000 a year for the county, and so we're going to end up spending additional money. I'm a proponent that we maintain and even if we spend more and provide the part-time employees more money, more hourly wage, it still won't cost us as much as hiring the full-time additional IT person. So we still save money in the long run, even if we want to pay the part-time people more money, based on the $21 an hour aggregate. In the past, it's also been brought to my attention that in certain cases, we've actually contracted portions of this work out. Is that correct?
Before I was here, yes.
Yes. So, and we've been able to contract some of that work out at a less cost to the county. So, you know, there's two instances where we're not going to violate the standards, and we're not going to spend more money. The other thing I'll add in, and I was just thinking about this the other day, if we go to the one full-time, in the past, we've been able to do and hire interns, whether they're high school or college kids as interns. We do this full-time, and we won't be able to do that anymore. So there again, I think we're kind of shorting ourselves just a little bit, and we're kind of shorting the county just a little bit by not taking that in consideration when you're looking at the personnel. And I'm not talking just to you, Doc Hartley, but to everybody. So, and that's kind of my feelings on it, and that's why I'm going to vote no for this. I think we can do a better job for the county, and I could probably do a better job of explaining it. But I just look at, we're able to pay them more, cost us less money, and I think the opportunity to hire some interns is also beneficial to us as well. Not only our local school districts within the county, but also, you know, college kids that live within this county as well. And I'm thinking of my own kids in that respect too. So, and on a paid internship, as a college student, and some of us may or may not know this, but a college student, paid internships are fantastic and they're hard to come by. And we have a paid internships here. That's all we do is paid internships. So I just think we need to consider that when we're voting on this. And that's all I got to add.
Thank you.
I'd like to add a couple things. I'm very sympathetic to what Mike's saying here regarding the cost. You know, I think we need to work very hard in this county to try to keep our costs down, try to keep our taxes down. And personnel is obviously, I think, one of our top expenditures. Unfortunately, as far as IT goes here, especially in the advent of COVID and now us having to have virtual meetings every month for the county board and all the committee meetings, John has become indispensable here. If John had COVID, or if John was gone, or if he wanted to, God forbid, take a vacation, I don't know how we'd function. And we literally have no backup. We have one part-time person that I don't know that we would trust to be able to run all this technology to even have a meeting. So I think it's very important that one way or another we find a backup here, because right now we have, you know, we're running on a weak link here. I mean, John does a great job, but we literally have no backup, and I think that's a problem, especially now that, you know, we're required to do all these Zoom meetings and everything else. And you know, maybe there's a solution, you know, like Mike has described, but you know, I don't know that I would necessarily trust a college intern for us to lean on so that we could have a board meeting. And so I think that's a very important thing for us to consider. And I guess that's about all I had to say about it.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Joel. Bob?
My turn?
Yeah.
I appreciate what Doc Carley has brought up, that he makes valid points, and so does Mr. Kirkton. So I'm going to go a little bit different direction here. Obviously, we know that we have, Alina and Diane have looked at this, Kathy's looked at it, the committee's looked at it, the committee's passed it on to the full board. I know they've done their homework on the cost analysis. When I first read that $13,000 figure in the minutes, I thought, well, that's the cost of benefits, which evidently fits the cost of benefits. I'm surprised that you can get a full-time person with that special technology knowledge, that you can get them for $42,000. That would surprise me. But my question, after all that verbiage, is someplace along the line, is this going to save us within all of the departments that this person would having to be helping? Are those all of those county departments going to become more efficient because we have this technology expert? And is there a cost savings in the fact that each of those departments will be more efficient?
Good question, Bob.
I ask that because I'm a firm believer in investing in technology. That's what I've done in my own personal business. Invested in a lot of technology, and you can get so much more done if you have people who really know what they're doing with that technology than you can by hiring more people. But in the county's case, we don't have enough people, maybe, to run that technology to help all of these departments we've got. This is a big business here with a lot of departments. And I can see where, in the long run, if it's helping those departments, there may be a cost savings on the other end. Has anybody taken a look at that possible scenario?
Thank you, Mr. Blackard.
Yeah, just real quick. I was in the IT meeting, obviously, as part of the committee, and I agree with Mike initially. In fact, that was my first reaction, that 2 part-time is more than equal to 1 full-time. But then after I listened to John testify, that the fact is he went over 6 months last year without that second part-time because the market was not there. So we're restricting him down to a part-time, and everybody who knows Kathy knows that as a part-time, she's the equivalent of a full-time person anyway in the amount that she is able to get done. So once she leaves, we're going to be down basically down to just John. If the market is not there for a part-time person, then we have to get the full-time, partially because during the same time that he went the 6 months without the assistance, we were asking more and more and more of him and of the technology throughout the county. And now we're even looking at adding body cameras to our sheriffs and storing that. We need to go ahead and, I hate to say that, we need to go ahead and do this just so that we can continue functioning at the same level that we have been blessed to function through this whole year with everything that's been put on us with COVID.
Hang on a second, Mr. Ritter. Mr. Runyon?
Yeah, my question, comments kind of go along with what Mr. Blacker just said, but I wanted to ask John a couple questions. One, it was my understanding that one of the reasons why you were wanting to go to this full-time employee is because you were having trouble finding part-time guys. Is that correct?
Last time when we did the part-time position, I had 3 people outside of town apply.
Okay. So if we go with what Mr. Kirkton was saying and bump, instead of going to a full-time position, bump the pay up for part-time guys, do you think that would make any difference?
Honestly, no. But my plan originally, when I was talking to Ginger about doing this, is to post it as a part-time or full-time. Post it for both, just to see what we get.
And then lastly, do you think this full-time position, you think you're going to have trouble finding someone to work for that kind of money, like what Mr. Weller was saying, that seems to get someone of quality for this type of position? Really doesn't seem like it's that much money, really.
It's not, but it's what I have in my budget to work with. But my hope is to get someone younger that wants to learn it, knows some, and could get capable of doing it.
So you think you're confident that you'd be able to find someone for this?
I'm hoping, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ritter?
Yeah, Mr. Sear, would it be easy to solve some of these questions, or would it be a difficult task to maybe come up with some ways that it would be saving the various departments in efficiency? I believe it was Mr. Weller who said, and I could be wrong, but I believe he said, is there a way that this would help out the other departments? If maybe we could
Yeah, yeah, I can.
Linda, did you have a question?
It's pretty much been said. I, too, always want to watch the budget, but IT is so important. I think that, you know, we have to keep the county running. All of the things, you know, out at the Law and Justice Center, everybody in the doors, everything. John's involved with everything. Everything's computerized nowadays. And so I think it's a place where we have to have a secure backup, and we keep the county up and running.
Any other questions or comments?
John, I assume that this person, should we get this hire, is going to basically be cross-trained with you.
Yes.
In case we don't have John here, person B is here and has your knowledge.
That's my ideal
I
plan.
realize
is
it's not going to happen overnight.
No, not overnight. But ideally, I want someone that I walk out and get hit by a bus. I want someone that's going to take over and run it like it should be, like we have it now. I don't want to run into an instance like we had when I first started here, when we had no antivirus anywhere. I don't want that. So
I think just to reiterate, I think one of the most important core things is that if there is, you know, somebody hired, that if you are not here, we're able to have board meetings. And I think that that would be, you know, priority number one in getting that person trained up to operate this camera system and everything else that it takes for us to, you know, continue to hold county government.
I just want to be clear about one more thing, since everybody else is getting one more item in. I'll be the naysayer. Have we really budgeted for this?
Yeah, John does have this in his budget, and
Because he said a budget of 42, but when I look at the numbers, it's over 54.
yeah, because those other expenses are budgeted in other line items, and so yes, I would say that we do have enough to cover the additional expenses within the budget that's approved as of right now.
Okay,
Now, that doesn't mean-
we have enough, but we've not really budgeted for it, correct?
We have
I mean,
not.
this is really an unforecasted expense.
Correct.
I mean, bottom line, it's still an unforecasted expense that we
Correct.
did not really budget for.
So that would be correct. The only difference, so the two funds that are affected are IMRF specifically, and then the insurance, which is paid for out of the general fund. And so those numbers are slightly higher, but it's budgeted higher than what we anticipate expending. So I will tell you that we do believe that there is enough money within those funds, within those appropriations for 2021 to cover those expenses. Now, what that means is if those things go up in 2022, then you're going to have to find additional resources where they could have already had money there to cover those things.
Or we could actually budget for it and plan for it.
Correct.
And maybe spend more money or hire somebody more capable if we actually planned and budgeted for it versus just trying to make it up and hope we can get her done. Because that's what I'm hearing, right or wrong.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilkie?
Yes, I don't understand a few things. Everybody knows that, or the way they talk, that John's doing a terrific job, and he's tried with part-time people, and he's recommended to us that he needs a full-time person. I know there's a little more expense, like Bob said, but that goes with hiring a full-time person. But that full-time person is here. He don't have to train two different people, and then a month later train another person. If you take that into consideration, that's a lot of money and a lot of services that we're not getting done. I think that as good as John is and everything, and this is what he recommends, I highly recommend that we help him out here.
Mr. Weller?
Mr. Chairman, is there another thing that we could possibly take a look at? Ginger, if you don't mind, I can put you on the spot here. Do you anticipate any employees leaving, which means they would be going off of the group insurance, and we're reducing the employee count by one person someplace along the line through the year, because that's a trade-off on the cost of the insurance for that one employee. Are we going to be able to absorb that by attrition?
To my knowledge, there is not an attrition in place to account for that one person. And it is truly unpredictable, one year to the next, who decides to take the insurance, who decides to go on their spouses or waive or have other insurance. We do have the funds in those accounts or in those different areas, as Alina has said. And one thing that I do want to point out, that the $13,000 does include Social Security, which we have to pay on part-time people as well. So truly, it's the IMRF expense and it's the health insurance expense that you would have to cover based on additional expenses.
Okay. Mr. Carley.
Well, my concern is not the fact that whether John needs somebody. He actually does. I agree with that 100% from what we've heard. My concern is, as we've again said before, we've talked about strategic planning from departments, and I'm just concerned about what sort of precedent this might set for the rest of the departments. I realize it's up to us as the board to consider what's a want list and what's necessary for those departments, but I just don't want to see a precedent set here where we end up spending more, even though we can think we can find it in the budget, maybe or maybe not. I have some concern there. I really do. I think it sets a precedent because there's some departments that'll come and ask for something, and I think it makes it tough. That's all. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying it makes it really tough in my mind.
Okay. Anything else?
Mary, just a minute. John, what was your thinking on this in August of 2020?
As far as doing the full-time, you mean?
What was the situation then? What's changed between then and now? Why we didn't ask in the budget process this last year to do
When we were doing the budget originally, I had Nathan here, so I had a part-time help. And then when we got done, he took a job down in St. Louis.
Okay.
My plan was for him to stay, but
Okay. Okay.
he didn't.
Okay. Fair enough.
He was part-time. He did come here as an intern from the high school.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Vietti. Bunning. Kirkton.
No.
Manker.
Yes.
Barrickman.
Yes.
Slagle. Bannon.
Yes.
Steichen. Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
No.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Carly.
No.
Weller.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Blackard.
Yes.
Ehring.
Yes.
Vitztum.
Yes.
Arbogast.
No.
Wilkie.
Yes.
Runyon.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That is all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Fannin. Now we'll move down to any additional committee reports as needed. If anybody would like to make a comment or on their committees.
I would just like to say that on the property committee, we just had the same old routine of bills and everything, but if anybody's going out, we've had good progress on the new health building out there. Mother Nature doesn't spoil it right now, we should get along pretty good. They're talking about in the next week, maybe if trusses come in, even setting trusses, so they're moving right along.
Nice.
And taking advantage of what conditions we did have. That's all I've got.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Mike?
Yes, from Elections Committee, thank you, Madam Chair. At your places, you'll find a quick survey. We on the Elections Committee would like you to fill that out, take a couple minutes. All we're trying to do is just kind of get a sounding what the board is thinking and what you all are thinking, so that when we start looking at redistricting, which we've already started working on, we can kind of focus down just a little bit better and get more into the details versus trying to guess. And so it would really help us focus and get a little bit more detail for you as we go into this. And I know there's a lot of questions out there. I myself have a lot of questions, but please call me or come to the committee meeting. It's on Monday at 5:30. You all are welcome to come or call and ask me questions, and I'll do the best I can to get, answer any of your questions and alleviate any concerns. So please take a couple minutes. It's anonymous if you want it to be. I don't care. And just give it to Alina. She's going to collect them up tonight before you leave. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? If not, we'll move down to public comment.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look through the pamphlet that's on your desk, Heartland Community College Annual Update, but I was glancing through it and I noticed on page 17 that our own Paul Ritter is mentioned in there with his students, that he had been nominated for a prize from Indianapolis for him and his students, and I just wanted to point that out to everyone and to say congratulations to Paul and his students for the nomination.
Congratulations. Gerald?
I'd like to comment on our health department doing a great job. They were on the Channel 25 News last night about how much farther we're ahead in Livingston County than any of the counties around us.
Good, thank you.
Yes.
Jim?
Well, I'd just like to talk about the grant that we okayed a couple of months ago as a board for hazardous pay for our employees. I think that several of us have heard many thank yous to the employees for doing that, so I commend my fellow board members who favored this. I know there were a few that didn't. I kind of wonder if those few, if you've received a stimulus check lately, what did you do with it? Send it back to the government or donate it to charity or keep it? I was be a little curious.
Thank you for your comment. I was going to mention the police reform, but Tony has already did a good job on that, so I won't have anything more to say about that, other than if there's anything else to come out of it, I will pass it along to the board next month. Seth?
Never mind. I'm okay.
Okay.
Sorry. The COVID relief grants that were given out, is that going to be made public who the grants are awarded to?
Yes, we will report back, yes.
Okay. And that will be as they come in or as they're awarded, or?
We'll probably give you a report at the end or maybe by the next meeting on who all they were awarded to, since we are doing it first come, first serve. But yes, we will let you know who we give them to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, if no other comment from anyone, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. No executive session. No.
I'll second, Ritter.
Who, Batty and Ritter? Roll call, please.
Vieti. Bunning. Kirkton.
Yes.
Manker. Yes. Barrickman.
Yes.
Slagle. Bannon.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Menninga.
Yes.
Kestner. Welch.
Yes.
Carly.
Yes.
Weller. Yes. Ritter. Yes. Mays.
Yes.
Lovell.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Blackard.
Yes.
Herring.
Yes.
Vidstam. Yes. Arbogast.
Yes.
Wilkie. Yes. Runyon.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.